Have you ever witnessed a mother slap her own daughter at a family wedding in front of 150 guests? No. So imagine this. You're at your sister's wedding, 250 guests, judges, lawyers, Baltimore's elite, all watching, and your mother just handed you a stack of documents on stage demanding you sign over your $3 million penthouse as a wedding gift to your sister. You say no, and her palm connects with your face so hard your earring flies across the marble floor. That was my reality. They expected me to cry, to apologize, to surrender like I always had. Instead, I picked up my earring, walked out, and made one phone call. 5 minutes later, a woman walked into that reception. When my mother saw who it was, she started screaming because the person she told everyone was senile and gone, had just arrived with a lawyer and proof of everything she'd been hiding. Before I continue, please like and subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. Now let me take you back 4 years to where this nightmare began. The call came on a rainy Thursday evening in May 2021. I was sitting alone in my tiny studio apartment in Silver Spring. Rain hammered against the single window. I was eating cold leftover pad thai directly from the carton, exhausted, reviewing blueprints for a client's kitchen renovation. Then my phone buzzed. My grandmother's name lit up the dark room. "Penelope, sweetheart," Evelyn Henderson said. Her voice was sharp, steady, exactly as it had always been during her 35 years as a fierce professor at Howard Law School. She never wasted a single breath. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." She dropped the bomb without warning. She was updating her will. She was leaving me the penthouse at 150 Southside Avenue. She had bought it in 2016 for $2.2 million, and now it was worth over $3 million. I froze. My chopsticks slipped from my fingers, hitting the table with a soft clatter. A $3 million penthouse. For me? Why me? I whispered into the receiver. I didn't ask because I was ungrateful. I asked because in my family, gifts always came with a hidden price tag. Because you are the only one who actually visits, she said simply. The absolute truth in her words made my chest ache. Every Saturday for 12 long years, Penelope. While your mother sends printed Christmas cards, and your sister sends nothing at all. You bring me yellow tulips because you remember they are my favorite. You sit with me when my bones hurt, and I have nothing interesting to say. Hot tears suddenly pricked my eyes, blurring the blueprints on my desk. She noticed. She remembered every single Saturday. "Grandma," I started, my throat tight. "The paperwork will be finalized next week," she cut in. Businesslike but warm. "Mitchell Warren is handling everything. He's been my attorney for 25 years. Then she paused. The line grew heavy. "Your mother will not be pleased." That was the understatement of the decade. The secret leaked within weeks. Baltimore's elite legal community is like a small gossipy town. By June 2021, my mother Valerie had summoned me for what she chillingly called a family discussion. I drove to her massive $5 million estate in Bolton Hill with a knot in my stomach. I remember stepping into that freezing, perfectly decorated living room. They were already waiting. My father Robert sat stiffly in his expensive leather armchair. My mother lounged on the velvet settee like a queen. My sister Morgan perched on the arm of the sofa, looking like she was posing for a magazine cover. They had arranged themselves in a half circle. A tribunal, waiting to sentence me, Penelope. My mother's voice was sweet, like honey poured over broken glass. "We need to talk about your grandmother's condition." Her condition. I slowly sat down on the only empty seat, a hard, straight-backed wooden chair placed directly in front of them. "She seems perfectly fine to me," I fired back, gripping the edges of the seat. "She is clearly not thinking straight," Valerie snapped, crossing her legs. Her diamond Chanel bracelet caught the harsh overhead light. "Leaving a $3 million property to one grandchild, completely excluding everyone else? That is not the behavior of a rational woman." "She isn't excluding anyone," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "She is giving me something she wants me to have. That is her right." Morgan let out a dramatic, fake little sob, wiping a dry eye. "This is just so unfair. I have always loved Grandma. I just don't have free time to visit like you do. I have a serious career. I have a life. You have a massive trust fund and a rich fiancé who owns a yacht," I thought bitterly, biting my tongue to keep the words locked behind my teeth. Then, my father spoke. It was the first time I had heard his voice all evening. "The fair thing to do," he began, using that calm, measured tone lawyers use to destroy people on the stand, "would be for you to decline the inheritance. Or, at the very least, agree to sell the property and split the money equally among the family." I stared at him. Robert Henderson, a man who hadn't asked a single question about my life, my hopes or my dreams in years. a man who skipped my college graduation for a golf tournament. He was telling me about fairness. "I am not declining anything," I said, my voice shaking but loud. "And I am not selling a thing. Grandma made this decision because she wanted to. If you have a problem with her choices, go talk to her." The temperature in that massive room seemed to instantly drop 15 degrees. Valerie's fake smile vanished completely, replaced by a cold, hard glare that made my skin crawl. "Then I hope you are prepared," she hissed, leaning forward, "because the consequences of being this selfish are going to tear your life apart." The punishment arrived faster than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't loud shouting or slammed doors. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. By the time crisp autumn winds blew in 2021, I realized I had been completely scrubbed from the family text group. I only discovered my own sister's engagement party through a glowing Instagram post. I stared at my phone screen in the quiet dark of my apartment. It was a picture of Morgan surrounded by our laughing cousins, holding up crystal champagne flutes at the dazzling Baltimore Marriott waterfront. The caption read, "Future Mrs. Campbell," with 4 sparkling diamond emojis. My chest tightened painfully. No quick text. No phone call. No invitation. Am I really that easy to throw away? Am I entirely erased from this family just like that? When I finally gathered the courage to confront my mother, her voice was dripping with fake sympathy. "Oh, Penelope," she sighed, sounding almost bored. "We simply assumed you wouldn't want to attend. You have been so dreadfully busy with your little decorating business." My fingernails dug deep into my palms. My little business was a fully licensed interior design studio. I had 15 active clients and a revenue that had doubled in just 12 months. I was building a real life with my own 2 hands. But to Valerie Henderson, anything lacking a fancy law degree or a millionaire husband was just a silly, pathetic hobby. Yet the absolute worst part wasn't being left out of the fancy dinners. It was the toxic poison that followed. Valerie started spinning cruel, calculated tales to anyone who would listen. At a neighborhood garden party I had stubbornly shown up to, I froze behind a tall floral arrangement. I overheard her venomous whisper drifting over the soft jazz music. "Penelope completely manipulated my poor mother," Valerie told a group of wealthy neighbors, pressing a hand to her chest. "She visited her constantly, slowly brainwashing her against us. You know how easily confused and vulnerable elderly people can be." My stomach violently churned. The ground felt like it was tilting beneath my feet. She is painting me as a monster, a scheming predator, an ungrateful daughter who exploited a confused old lady for cash. Instead of marching over and screaming the truth, I swallowed my bitter pride. I walked away. I stayed perfectly quiet. I foolishly believed that if I just kept my head down, the storm would eventually pass. I didn't realize that my silence was the exact weapon she needed to destroy my reputation. Then came the mystery I couldn't solve. By late 2022, Grandma Evelyn suddenly packed up her entire life and moved into Broadmead Senior Living. It was a highly secure luxury facility in Westminster costing $14,000 every single month. What I didn't know back then was the dark, twisted truth. I had no idea Valerie had secretly hired a shady, corrupt psychiatrist to write up fake medical papers declaring Evelyn mentally unfit. Grandma hadn't moved to find a peaceful retirement. She was running for her freedom. She fled to a fortress with its own fierce legal team to block my mother from forcing a nasty conservatorship and stealing her choices. When I visited her on quiet Saturday afternoons, she claimed she just wanted to escape the exhausting drama. But sometimes, when the afternoon sunlight hit her face just right, I caught a strange, haunted look in her proud eyes. A terrifying flicker of raw fear. My grandmother, the bravest woman I knew, looked hunted. "Grandma," I asked gently one afternoon, holding her frail, papery hand, "did something terrible happen between you and Mom?" She stared out the window at the perfectly trimmed gardens for a painfully long time. "Some things are better left alone," she finally whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "At least for now." I stupidly let it go. I never should have stopped asking. I should have pushed harder. It would take 4 agonizing years to uncover the horrifying secret she was guarding. A truth so explosive and dangerous. It was about to blow my mother's perfect world wide open and pull me into a trap I might not survive. February 2025 arrived with a bitter chill, exactly 4 months before the event that would shatter my reality. I was safely hidden away inside my warm design studio on a quiet Monday afternoon. Swatches of rich velvet and cool linen covered my desk for a massive Bethesda townhouse project. Then the Daily Mail slipped through the brass slot, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Hidden among boring utility bills and glossy supplier magazines was a thick envelope made of expensive heavy cream paper. My fingers traced the raised ink. The fancy swirling calligraphy was so ridiculously elaborate it took me a few seconds to actually read my own name. With a trembling thumb I broke the wax seal. Inside rested a gold-foiled invitation. Morgan's wedding. May 12, 2025. The elegant Four Seasons Hotel. Strictly black tie. For 60 long seconds I completely stopped breathing. I just stared blindly at the elegant letters. Why now? After 3 agonizing years of being completely ignored, treated like a literal ghost. No cheerful holiday cards, no awkward birthday greetings, absolutely zero casual text messages checking in. They had erased me from their universe. Yet suddenly, here it was, a golden ticket back into the fold. That exact same evening, my cell phone vibrated violently against the kitchen counter. The caller ID made my stomach drop to my knees. Mother. Penelope, darling. Valerie cooed through the speaker. Her pitch was unnervingly soft, wrapped in a thick layer of fake affection. I had not heard that sweet maternal melody since the day the inheritance news originally broke. It made the hairs on my arms stand straight up. Did you receive Morgan's lovely invitation? I did, I replied cautiously, gripping the edge of the sink. Oh, wonderful. You know, this beautiful celebration is going to be such a perfect opportunity for our broken family to finally heal, to move gracefully forward. She paused dramatically, letting the heavy silence do her dirty work. To show the entire city that the Hendersons are proudly united. I waited. Here it comes, I thought, bracing myself for the impact. She never calls just to chat. I have been thinking, she smoothly continued. And boom, there it was. The ugly naked truth behind the sudden olive branch. This joyous occasion would be the absolute perfect time to gently revisit our little conversation about the Southside penthouse. Morgan and Tristan will desperately need a respectable place to live after their romantic honeymoon. Somewhere highly appropriate for a bright young couple starting a magnificent life together. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting a wave of pure nausea. Of course, the fancy invitation was never a peace offering. It was a shiny metal hook wrapped in bait. Mom, I breathed out, my chest aching with a familiar exhausting grief. The penthouse is legally mine. Grandma left it specifically to me. That fact hasn't magically changed. Nothing has to change on paper, sweetheart, she purred, pouring on the manipulation. You could simply quietly transfer the deed as a breathtaking wedding gift. Just imagine how incredibly generous that would look to our friends. Think of how bursting with pride your grandmother would be, seeing you selflessly supporting your baby sister. The sheer breathtaking audacity of her request actually punched the air right out of my lungs. She was using my grandmother, the brilliant woman who specifically chose to protect me by giving me that safe haven, as a twisted emotional weapon to force me into giving it away. I am not transferring a single brick, Valerie, I said flatly, dropping the title of Mom. The fake warmth evaporated instantly. The mask slipped off, revealing the monster underneath. Morgan deserves a proper high-class start. She is marrying into the powerful Campbell dynasty. Do you even comprehend what that actually means? Tristan's father is a senior managing partner at Ridley & Gates. They will be entertaining politicians. They will be hosting lavish charity galas. They require a magnificent home that accurately reflects their superior social status. Then Tristan's wealthy father can buy them one. I snapped back, my pulse roaring in my ears. A terrifying dead silence stretched across the wireless connection. When Valerie finally spoke again, her voice was absolute freezing ice. I highly expect you to think very carefully about your stubbornness before stepping foot into that venue, and I expect you to make the correct choice. Click. The line went dead. I lowered the phone, my hands shaking violently. She wasn't just making a polite request, she was preparing a brutal trap, and if I walked into that ballroom empty-handed, she was going to publicly slaughter me. May 10th, just 48 hours left until the grand event. I was flipping the heavy metal locks on my studio door when David Rollins, my old college friend turned investigative reporter, violently shoved his way inside. He looked utterly terrified, his chest heaving as he frantically yanked the window blinds shut. Penelope, you have to listen to me right now, he gasped, his wide eyes darting around my quiet office. Valerie hired ruthless private investigators. They have been digging through your dumpsters in the dark. They tried to hack your security camera feeds. They are hunting for the original penthouse deeds. My stomach plummeted to the floor. Whatever is supposed to happen at that ceremony, David warned, gripping my shoulders so hard it bruised. It is a massive trap. She isn't going to politely ask you to sign those papers. She is going to forcefully corner you. My blood turned to freezing ice. My own mother is hunting me like an animal. Later that exact same night was the lavish rehearsal dinner. I had originally planned to stay far away, but David's frantic warning severely rattled my nerves. I needed to see the battlefield I was blindly walking onto. The second I stepped inside the bustling upscale restaurant, my father Robert suddenly intercepted my path. He grabbed my elbow tight, pulling me firmly into a dim, quiet coat room. His gray eyes rapidly filled with welling tears. "Penelope, please," his voice broke tragically. It was a masterful, heartbreaking performance. "Your mother is completely falling apart. The soaring costs, the immense stress. If you refuse to sign that property over, it will permanently destroy this family. Please just do it for me." I stared blankly at the tall man who had completely ignored my existence for 4 agonizing years. "He is using my childhood craving for his love against me." "No, Dad," I whispered softly, holding my ground. In a split second, the fake tears magically vanished. His sad face instantly hardened into a cruel, unrecognizable, monstrous mask. "Then you will get exactly the total ruin you deserve tomorrow," he sneered, violently shoving past my shoulder. The physical threat hung thick and heavy in the stuffy air. I retreated back to my dark studio, watching the fading sun cast long, eerie shadows across my wooden drafting table. I finally understood the terrifying stakes. If I attended that reception and boldly refused Valerie in front of the powerful crowd she had spent 4 decades carefully cultivating, she would make me pay dearly. She would eagerly tell every single wealthy guest that I was a selfish, rotten child actively ruining my sister's most special day. She would cleverly weaponize the entire Baltimore elite against my career, my hard-earned reputation, my growing business, my future clients. Everything would instantly vanish into thin air. But if I cowardly hid at home, that would be my ultimate surrender. It would look like I was too deeply ashamed to show my face. Proof I was guilty. I did absolutely nothing wrong, I fiercely reminded myself. I gratefully accepted a beautiful gift from the only woman who truly loved me. I refused to be treated like a dirty criminal. I squared my shoulders. I was going to attend. My racing mind flashed back to a vital phone call from exactly 1 week earlier. My cell had rung sharply at 8 in the morning. "Sweetheart," Grandma Evelyn had said, her tone carrying a terrifying urgency. I had only heard maybe twice in my entire life. "I need you to listen carefully." I grabbed a pen, my pulse spiking. "If something ugly happens at that wedding, and I strongly believe something will, I want you to call Mitchell Warren immediately. The number is 410-555-0198. Write that down." "Grandma, what is going to happen?" I pleaded, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Your mother foolishly thinks I don't know what she is aggressively planning." Evelyn's voice remained calm, but I could clearly hear the unbreakable steel hiding beneath it. "She conveniently forgets I was a brilliant lawyer long before she was even born. I have prepared everything, Penelope. Mitchell has all the necessary documents. He and I will be waiting in a parked car, exactly 3 blocks away. We have been waiting for this exact night." "What documents?" I begged, gripping the edge of my desk. "Just remember the number," she commanded gently. She paused, taking a slow, deep breath. "And remember that I love you. Whatever happens, I love you." She had hung up before I could ask another question. I had saved the contact in my phone, staring at the glowing screen with wildly shaking hands. I hadn't fully understood her chilling warning then, but as the final hours ticked down to the main event, I realized I was walking straight into a live minefield, and my mother had absolutely no idea I was carrying the detonator. May 12, 2025. 6. The Grand Four Seasons Hotel towered over Charles Street like a glittering monument to old money and older secrets. I had driven past those giant glass doors hundreds of times, but stepping through them today felt entirely different. It felt exactly like walking barefoot into enemy territory. The massive ballroom was breathtakingly beautiful, yet deeply suffocating. Hundreds of pure white orchids spilled gracefully from shining crystal chandeliers. A 14-piece jazz band played a cheerful, upbeat tune in the far corner, harshly mocking the heavy dread sitting in my stomach. Waiters in sharp black ties glided past, carrying silver trays loaded with bubbling champagne flutes and tiny fancy appetizers. Every single detail screamed extreme wealth, flawless taste, and Valerie Henderson's absolute control. 145 guests. I had nervously counted the empty chairs during the cocktail hour. Powerful judges, wealthy doctors, ruthless investment bankers, and old Baltimore families whose names were carved into hospital wings. These were the elite people my mother had spent 40 years desperately impressing. This was her loyal audience, her hand-picked jury. I smoothed the skirt of my simple, elegant navy blue dress. I had agonizingly debated for hours over what to wear. Anything too flashy would be instantly labeled as showing off my new penthouse money. Anything too plain would be loudly mocked as an embarrassment to the family name. So I chose something that just felt like me. Quiet but unbending. My father Robert found me standing alone near a melting life-sized ice swan just 15 minutes after I arrived. "Penelope," he nodded stiffly. His blank eyes completely slid past my face, treating me like a broken piece of furniture he was trying hard not to bump into. "Glad you could make it, Dad," I replied, my voice completely hollow. We stood awkwardly in the freezing air of the ice sculpture. After 34 years, we had absolutely nothing left to say to each other. Suddenly, Morgan magically appeared in a massive floating cloud of white tulle and sparkling sapphire crystals. Her long veil trailed beautifully behind her like a fragile promise of the perfect life she always believed she deserved. She leaned in and hugged me. Her thin arms circled my shoulders, but our bodies never actually touched. It was exactly the way you would coldly embrace a stranger at a boring business event. "Penelope, you actually came," she beamed. Her bright smile was totally camera-ready. Flawless white teeth, perfect makeup, a masterclass performance. "Of course I came," I answered softly. "You are my sister." She quickly pulled back. The sweet expression on her face instantly shifted into something dark and highly calculating. "Did you bring the paperwork?" she whispered sharply. I blinked, my chest tightening. "What paperwork?" "Mom clearly said you would have the official transfer documents totally ready by today." Morgan's tone was light, almost playful, but her eyes were cold, hard glass. She was hunting for the penthouse, our supposed wedding gift, so this was the ugly reality. They had already proudly decided among themselves that I would easily cave. The fancy invitation, the sweet phone call, the fake reconciliation theater, all of it was just a sick, twisted game leading to this exact moment. "Morgan, there are no transfer documents," I stated clearly, keeping my ground. "What do you mean?" she snapped. "I mean the penthouse is legally mine. It is not a shiny gift. It is absolutely not up for discussion." Her flawless smile violently cracked. "But Mom said." "I do not care what Mom confidently told you," I interrupted, keeping my voice dangerously low and steady so the nearby guests wouldn't hear. "But I am not signing a single thing. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever." Morgan's jaw clenched so hard I thought her teeth might shatter. For one terrifying second she looked exactly like Valerie, the exact same flash of wild, unhinged fury barely trapped beneath her pale skin. "You know Tristan and I were already planning to proudly move in right after the honeymoon. We already told our luxury realtor we wouldn't need the other condo in Canton. We already told everyone," she hissed fiercely. "You bragged to everyone about a home that does not belong to you." I fired back. "It should belong to us." Her voice aggressively rose, catching the sharp attention of a waiter who froze mid-step, his tray suspended in the air. This was definitely not the elegant, peaceful evening anyone had envisioned. "You don't even need it. You live in that sad little place in Silver Spring. You never entertain important guests. You have absolutely no one to impress. What is the actual point of you having a $3 million penthouse?" "The point? What was the point of me having anything nice, anything truly valuable, anything that proved I might actually matter as much as she did?" I had spent my entire life being painfully asked that exact same question in 100 different cruel ways. "The point," I said quietly, locking eyes with the furious bride, "is that Grandma wanted me to have it, and her dying wishes matter a lot more than your selfish real estate plans." Morgan just stared at me, pure venom in her glare. Then she leaned in dangerously close, her sickeningly sweet bridal perfume choking my lungs. "Mom is going to handle this," she warned in a dark whisper. "And when she finally does, do not dare say I didn't warn you." She abruptly spun around and swept away toward a giggling group of bridesmaids, leaving me standing completely alone. I desperately needed to breathe. I turned quickly toward the open bar, hoping a cold drink would steady my violently shaking nerves. But before I could even order, a tall woman in a crisp cream Chanel suit stepped directly into my path, completely blocking my escape. I instantly recognized her. Pamela Harrington. One of Valerie's snobby tennis partners and the loud, proud wife of a powerful federal judge. "You are Penelope, aren't you?" Pamela asked. Her wide smile never reached her freezing, judgmental eyes. "Valerie has mentioned you quite often." "I bet she has," I thought bitterly. "I heard you are kindly holding on to some tricky property for your poor grandmother," Pamela smoothly continued, swirling her expensive wine. "That is very highly responsible of you. Will you be selling it off soon? There it was. The clever poisonous narrative Valerie had been aggressively spinning all over town. I wasn't the rightful chosen heir. I was just the temporary, lowly caretaker of massive assets that would eventually be properly distributed to the favorite child. Actually, I said, lifting my chin high, I live there. Pamela's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot straight up in sheer shock. Oh, she stammered, completely caught off guard. I thought, well, never mind what I thought. She quickly excused herself, awkwardly disappearing into the thick, glittering crowd. I stood frozen in that suffocating sea of expensive silk in silent judgment, finally understanding the massive, terrifying, invisible wall I was truly up against. Valerie had been expertly preparing this social battlefield for years. Every polite conversation, every fancy charity event, every carefully dropped comment, all of it was laying the groundwork for my destruction, and tonight she fully intended to brutally collect her prize. I just had no idea how far into the darkness she was actually willing to drag me to get it. I pushed through the heavy glass doors and escaped onto the stone balcony. The crisp May night air was sharp enough to bite my bare arms, but after the suffocating perfumed heat of that crowded ballroom, I desperately welcomed the chill. I leaned heavily against the cold railing, staring blindly out over the glowing streetlights of Charles Street. I tried to force my racing heartbeat to slow down. They are all in on it, every single one of them. Suddenly, my small purse vibrated. The bright screen flashed a name that made me gasp. Grandma Evelyn. I answered the call before the second ring. Hello, my brave girl. Her voice floated through the tiny speaker. It was eerily calm, far too peaceful for a woman whose family was actively tearing itself apart. Tell me exactly what is happening in there. I nervously glanced back through the transparent glass at the glittering, swirling crowd of wealth and lies. How do you even know something is happening right now? I whispered, my throat tight. Because I know the child I raised, Evelyn replied, a heavy sadness lacing her words. Valerie has been secretly planning a massive spectacle for weeks. She has been making hushed phone calls, gathering her powerful friends, building her twisted case against you. She foolishly thinks I am totally blind because I am locked safely away in my retirement home. The sheer disdain in my grandmother's tone was incredibly sharp. She conveniently forgets that I have loyal friends in this city who actually like me. I almost let out a broken laugh. Almost. Grandma, what is she planning to do to me? I don't know the exact details, but I know it will happen tonight, right while she has her grand audience captive. That is exactly how Valerie operates. She feeds on attention. She desperately needs important witnesses to validate her cruelty. Evelyn's voice suddenly softened, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. Penelope, do you remember the emergency number I gave you? Mitchell Warren's direct line? I have it saved in my favorites. I promised, gripping the phone tighter. If anything goes wrong, anything at all, you call him immediately. He is sitting by his phone, expecting your signal. He has everything ready. I pressed my freezing back against the solid stone wall. Grandma, what exactly is everything? What dark secret are you not telling me? A heavy, painful silence stretched across the wireless connection. When Evelyn finally spoke, her words changed my entire universe. 8 months ago, your friend David came to visit my facility. David Rollins, my trusted buddy from freshman year at Belmont University, now a hungry investigative reporter for the local paper. He had mentioned digging into some shady real estate transactions recently, but I never connected the dots. He came to visit you? Why? Because he uncovered something deeply disturbing, she explained, her voice dropping lower. A highly suspicious property sale back in 2019, a beautiful summer house out in Chesapeake Bay that legally belonged to me, a house I absolutely never sold. My breath violently caught in my lungs. What do you mean you never sold it? I mean exactly that. Your mother sold it behind my back for $950,000. She completely forged my signature on the official deed. The entire world physically tilted beneath my high heels. I gripped the iron railing just to stay standing. Grandma? No. My own mother is a thief. A criminal. I didn't want to believe my own flesh and blood could do this either, Evelyn admitted, her voice turning to rough gravel. That is exactly why I hired elite experts. A private company called Forensic Document Services, located right here in town. They ruthlessly analyzed the fake signatures. The scientific probability of a forgery was 99.4%. That wasn't a tiny suspicion. That was absolute, undeniable certainty. Why didn't you instantly tell me? My voice cracked, coming out hoarse and broken. Why didn't you march straight to the police? Because she had phony doctor evaluations fully prepared. Evelyn fired back, the raw anger finally bleeding through. If I had boldly gone to the cops in 2021, Valerie would have used those fake psychiatric files to have me legally committed to an asylum and stripped me of every single penny I owned. I had to wait in the shadows. I had to quietly gather ironclad, indisputable proof from independent forensic labs to completely destroy her fake medical records. I was slowly building a steel cage she couldn't squirm out of. I hoped. I stuttered, tears finally spilling down my cold cheeks. I still hoped there was some wild explanation, some innocent reason that wasn't what it looked like. But we both knew the awful truth. There wasn't. Understanding suddenly flooded my brain like a tidal wave. "That is exactly why you moved to Broadmead," I gasped. "Not because you wanted a peaceful retirement, because you couldn't stand being trapped in her house anymore." I couldn't trust my own daughter, Penelope, and I couldn't prove a single crime without completely destroying our entire world. So I removed myself from the board. I fiercely protected what little I could still protect. Your inheritance, the penthouse, my remaining cash, and I simply waited. Waited for what? For Valerie to become greedy and make a fatal mistake. Evelyn's tone hardened into pure ice. Tonight might finally be that mistake. If she pushes you too far in public, if she exposes her true nature to that crowd, then Mitchell has everything he needs to unleash hell. The forensic lab report, the original stolen transaction papers, and hospital witnesses who physically saw me during the exact week I supposedly signed those fake deeds. I was lying in Mercy Medical Center for 8 brutal weeks recovering from a shattered hip. I couldn't have signed a birthday card, let alone a legal contract. I squeezed my eyes shut, absorbing the crushing weight of her words. My mother hadn't just tried to bully me. She had actively stolen nearly $1 million from her own elderly mother. She had committed massive federal fraud. And then, she had cruelly let Grandma take the awful blame for losing her mind when she changed her will to protect me. "Penelope," Evelyn called out, pulling my spinning mind back to the present. "I am not sharing this horror story to make you deeply hate your family. I am telling you because you desperately need to understand the vicious predator you are dealing with, and you need to know that if she tries to publicly corner you tonight, you are not helpless. You have never been alone." Inside the warm hotel, I heard the jazz band cheerfully start up a new swing number. It sounded grotesquely happy compared to the nightmare I was living. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, wiping my wet face. "Whatever happens in that room, do not sign a single piece of paper. And if it goes terribly bad, if she pushes you beyond what your heart can bear, call Mitchell. Tell him the documents are needed. He will know exactly what to do." She paused. When Evelyn spoke again, I could actually hear the fierce, proud smile in her voice. "If Mitchell calls me, I will be standing in that lobby within 5 short minutes. I have been waiting 4 long years for this exact showdown, darling. I am absolutely not going to miss it." She hung up. I stood alone on that dark balcony for a long moment, letting the freezing wind whip my hair around my face. Then, I took a massive breath, straightened my tired shoulders, smoothed my dress, and boldly walked back into the bright, dangerous ballroom. I was completely ready, or at least I foolishly thought I was. I need to take a quick breath right here, because I know some of you listening to my story have been deeply trapped in situations just like mine, surrounded by toxic people who are legally supposed to love you, but instead they constantly make you feel incredibly small and worthless. If this painful journey is hitting close to home for you, please let me know down in the comments. Should I have just grabbed my coat and sprinted out the front doors right then? Or was I brave to stay and face the approaching storm? Your honest answers mean the world to me. Now let me tell you the terrifying thing that happened next. I thought I was fully prepared for a simple, nasty family argument, but I had absolutely no idea my mother had secretly hired a professional executioner to publicly destroy me in front of 145 witnesses. The lavish dinner plates had been quickly cleared away. The endless, boring toasts were finally over. Robert had delivered a painfully stiff, robotic speech about our deep family values. Tristan's wealthy father had practically written a long poem about the powerful historic merger of 2 giant Baltimore dynasties. I sat completely frozen at table 18, shoved near the dark back doors with confused distant cousins who barely remembered my name. That was perfectly fine by me. I desperately wanted to remain totally invisible. But Valerie Henderson had a completely different, wicked script written for tonight. The sharp clink of silver against crystal suddenly cut through the loud chatter. My mother stood proudly at the grand head table. She held a bubbling champagne flute in one hand and a black microphone in the other. Her brilliant smile was blinding. Her gold Versace gown sparkled violently under the massive chandeliers. "If I could please have everyone's attention," she announced. Her voice echoed off the high ceiling. "I would love to take a brief moment for something incredibly special. A beautiful family tradition that my sweet Morgan has begged me to facilitate." A terrifying prickle of raw dread shot straight up my spine. "Run," my brain screamed. "Run right now." As many of you dear friends know, the Henderson family fiercely believes in taking care of our own. Valerie lied flawlessly. "We heavily support each other. We make joyful sacrifices for each other." Her cold eyes swept across the massive room, locking onto my face for one terrifying second before moving on. "And tonight, in the pure spirit of that endless love, I would like to invite my eldest daughter, Penelope, to join me up here on the stage." 145 pairs of curious eyes instantly swiveled toward my dark corner. I couldn't breathe. My feet felt permanently glued to the patterned carpet. "Penelope, sweetheart," Valerie cooed. Her tone carried a sickening note of gentle encouragement that I knew was pure, rehearsed theater. "Come on up here, honey. Do not be shy." What actual choice did I have? If I stubbornly refused to stand up, I would instantly become the bitter, difficult sister who maliciously ruined Morgan's fairy tale reception. My legs felt like heavy lead blocks as I finally pushed my chair back. I walked slowly through the winding maze of expensive tables, ignoring the hushed whispers and staring faces. I climbed the 3 carpeted steps to the raised platform where my mother waited with a serpent's welcoming smile. "There she is," Valerie beamed, wrapping a tight arm around my bare shoulders. To the clapping audience it looked like deep affection. To me it was a painful grip of absolute control. "Now everyone listen closely," she projected into the mic. "Our dear Penelope has been secretly holding on to something very, very precious. My late mother left her a breathtaking penthouse apartment over in the exclusive South Side district, valued at over $3 million. Quite a stunning inheritance." Excited murmurs rippled wildly through the fancy crowd. I spotted Pamela Harrington nodding knowingly in the front row. "Penelope has been bravely keeping it safe," Valerie continued smoothly, spinning her wicked web, patiently waiting for just the right magical moment to finally share it with her loved ones. And what better, more perfect moment than this exact second? Morgan's magical wedding day. The beautiful start of her new life with Tristan. Suddenly, Valerie produced a thick leather folder from behind the tall floral centerpiece. I hadn't even seen it hiding there. She flipped it open to reveal a massive stack of dense legal documents. Transfer of deed, quitclaim agreement. My full name was already neatly typed out on the blank signature lines. "All our sweet Penelope needs to do is sign her name," Valerie beamed at the cheering crowd. "And this unbelievable generous gift will help Morgan and Tristan start their marriage in a home that truly reflects their bright future." Before I could even blink, a tall, shady man stepped out from the dark shadows of the heavy velvet drapery. Marcus Vance. He was a notorious, dirty fixer for Baltimore's corrupt elite, a shady notary public whose official stamp was already hovering dangerously over the papers. Valerie hadn't just brought contracts, she had hired a ruthless legal executioner. Marcus roughly grabbed my left wrist, his thick fingers clamped down like an iron vice. He aggressively tried to force an expensive Montblanc pen into my shaking palm. "Just sign the paper, Penelope," he muttered under his nasty breath. "Do not make a stupid scene." The entire room actually erupted into loud applause. They clapped and cheered like this was a heartwarming movie scene. They thought I was performing a heroic act of sisterly devotion, completely blind to the fact that I was being publicly bullied into surrendering my entire future. "Mom," my voice was quiet but incredibly steady. "I am absolutely not signing this." Valerie's giant smile never wavered, but her grip on my shoulder dug sharply into my collarbone. "Do not be nervous, sweetheart. It is just basic paperwork." "It is not just paperwork," I pushed back, my voice rising. "It is the exact apartment Grandma Evelyn left to me. Not to Morgan. Not to this family. To me." The joyful applause died instantly. The dead, awkward silence that quickly replaced it was totally deafening. "Penelope," Valerie hissed. Her voice dropped low, but she forgot she was holding the microphone. The speakers amplified her nasty warning. "Let's not make this difficult." "I am not making it anything," I stated fiercely. "I am telling you no." I violently yanked my trapped arm out of Marcus's painful grip. Suddenly Morgan stormed to the edge of the stage. Her face was a twisted mask of wounded innocence. "Penelope, you are really going to do this to me on my actual wedding day?" "Morgan, I never asked to be dragged up here." I defended myself, my pulse roaring. "I didn't ask to be put on public display like a circus animal. You all secretly set this cruel trap up without even warning me, because we knew you would be a selfish brat." Morgan spat, completely dropping the sweet bride act. We knew you would greedily choose that stupid apartment over your own flesh and blood. The apartment isn't stupid when you desperately want to live in it. I fired back. Down in the crowd, Tristan's powerful father coughed very uncomfortably. A shocked waiter near the swinging kitchen doors looked completely frozen in time. A silver tray suspended awkwardly in the air. This was turning into a massive, humiliating disaster. Valerie's perfect composure finally shattered into a million pieces. Her pale face flushed bright red. Her voice exploded. "You ungrateful, rotten child." The hot microphone blasted every furious syllable across the hall. "After everything we have generously done for you, after we raised you, heavily educated you, and financially supported your little fake business, you cannot do this one tiny thing for your own sister? You never supported my business." I yelled back, the dam finally breaking. "You have never even stepped foot inside my studio, and you absolutely did not raise me. Grandma Evelyn did. Every single lonely summer while you were flying off to fancy conferences and exclusive galas and anywhere else that wasn't our home." Loud, collective gasps scattered through the wealthy audience. I had definitely said way too much. I knew I had crossed the invisible line, but I couldn't stop the truth from pouring out. The penthouse is legally mine because Grandma deeply wanted me to have a safe place, because I was actually there for her, because I genuinely cared. And absolutely no amount of public bullying is ever going to change her mind. Valerie's hand moved so insanely fast, I didn't even see the strike coming. Smack! The vicious slap connected with my left cheek so incredibly hard it violently snapped my head sideways. My silver earring, the delicate one Grandma Evelyn had lovingly given me for my 35th birthday, flew straight off my earlobe. It bounced across the polished marble floor with a sharp ringing sound like a tiny silver bell. The massive ballroom went completely terrifyingly silent. Not a single person breathed. For 5 long seconds I stood perfectly, completely still. My stinging cheek burned like hot fire. My vision briefly blurred with unshed tears. I could physically feel 145 pairs of shocked eyes boring right into my soul, holding their breath, waiting to see if I would totally crumble and cry. What I did was slowly breathe in. I calmly bent down. I carefully picked up the tiny piece of silver. It was slightly bent from the hard impact, but it wasn't broken. I methodically straightened the tiny post and proudly put it right back into my ear. Then I stood tall and looked my furious mother dead in the eyes. "That is the absolute last time you will ever touch me," I said. My voice did not shake even a tiny bit. I was incredibly proud of that fact. I slowly turned my back on her. I walked gracefully off that stage. I marched straight through the silent maze of tables, completely ignoring the wild whispers, the wide-eyed stares, and the frozen jazz band. I pushed open the heavy double doors and stepped out into the empty, quiet hotel lobby. I did not run away. I did not shed a single tear. I calmly found a private, quiet corner hidden near the wooden concierge desk. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the specific emergency number I had saved exactly 1 week ago. It rang only once. Mitchell Warren's office. A deep professional voice answered immediately. "This is Penelope Henderson," I said. My tone was cold, steady, and absolutely certain. "Please tell my grandmother that the documents are finally needed." "Understood perfectly, Miss Henderson," the lawyer replied smoothly. "She will be walking through those front doors within 5 minutes." I ended the call. I slowly sat down on a soft velvet bench, gently touched my violently throbbing cheek, and simply waited. 5 tiny minutes. That was all the time I needed. 5 short minutes until my mother's entire empire of lies came crashing down to the floor in front of everyone she ever wanted to impress. 8:40 p.m. I was still sitting frozen on that soft velvet bench when the heavy brass doors of the Four Seasons Hotel slowly glided open. The cold night wind rushed in, and right behind it walked my grandmother. Evelyn Henderson was 82 years old. She relied on a dark wooden cane now, her steps noticeably slower than the energetic woman from my childhood memories. But her fierce spirit, that hadn't aged a single second. She radiated the exact same formidable, commanding presence that had made grown men tremble in her Howard Law classrooms for 4 decades. She wore a simple black dress draped under a thick, elegant gray cashmere coat. Her silver hair was pinned back flawlessly. Right beside her marched Mitchell Warren. The late 40s attorney adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, clutching a battered leather briefcase that looked heavy enough to hold the weight of the entire world. "She actually came. She is really here. Grandma," I breathed out, instantly jumping to my feet. For a split second my tough armor cracked. My voice wobbled. She crossed the quiet lobby and gently took my face between her warm, soft hands. Her sharp eyes immediately scanned my burning left cheek, missing absolutely nothing. "She hit you?" "Yes." Evelyn's jaw tightened so hard her bones popped. Then, she softly kissed my forehead, exactly like she used to when I was a little girl who had scraped her knee. "Then let us finish this nightmare," she declared. We walked through the towering ballroom doors together. The fancy reception was in total, absolute chaos. Nervous guests huddled in tight clusters, aggressively whispering, their expensive champagne completely forgotten on the tables. Morgan was sobbing wildly. Real ugly tears this time. While Tristan and his snobby parents hovered awkwardly nearby, looking deeply mortified. Up on the stage, Valerie was frantically waving her arms, arguing fiercely with Robert, who looked desperately pale. No one noticed us at first. Then a woman near the back let out a loud gasp. Then another person pointed. Like the parting of a grand sea, the crowd slowly split open. Valerie suddenly whipped around. Her furious eyes landed on her elderly mother, marching boldly across the polished marble floor. "Mom?" The single word came out strangled, choking in Valerie's throat. All the vibrant color instantly drained from her perfectly made-up face. How are you even here?" "I am here to attend my granddaughter's beautiful wedding," Evelyn announced. Her crystal-clear voice easily carried across the suddenly dead-silent room. "I was not invited, of course, but I happily decided to come anyway. I deeply hope Morgan does not mind." Morgan, with thick black mascara streaming in messy rivers down her pale cheeks, could only stare in paralyzed horror. "What is the meaning of this?" Valerie's voice shook wildly. "What are you doing here?" "I am doing exactly what I should have done 4 years ago." Evelyn stopped about 12 feet away from her trembling daughter, close enough for every single guest to hear the execution. "I am telling the absolute truth." She slowly turned to face the captivated audience. 145 highly educated people, lawyers, federal judges, doctors, who all understood exactly what was unfolding. "My name is Evelyn Henderson. I was a proud professor of law for 35 years. I am of perfectly sound mind," she declared loudly. "And I am standing here tonight to publicly confirm that the penthouse at 150 Southside Avenue, the exact property my daughter has been aggressively demanding my granddaughter surrender, was joyfully left to Penelope Henderson in my official will. That document is legal, strictly valid, and completely enforceable. There are 0 other claims to that home." Mitchell Warren clicked open his leather briefcase. He pulled out a crisp, thick paper. "This is a certified, stamped copy of Mrs. Henderson's final will," the lawyer boomed, holding it high. "It is fully notarized and filed legally with the Somerset County Probate Court. I have been her dedicated attorney for 28 years. I swear to its total authenticity." Valerie's face twisted into an ugly, desperate mask. "This is completely absurd. Mother, you are confused. You are terribly sick. You have no idea what you are even saying. I understand everything perfectly." Evelyn's tone turned to freezing, absolute ice. "What you do not understand, Valerie, is that I have been silently watching you for 4 long years. I watched every move. The trap is springing shut. There is no way out now." Evelyn nodded sharply at Mitchell. He smoothly pulled out a second stack of papers. "These are official transaction records for a stunning waterfront property located in Chesapeake Bay," Mitchell projected to the breathless room. "A huge estate that was legally deeded in Mrs. Henderson's name until November 15th, when it was mysteriously sold for $950,000. The massive ballroom went so graveyard silent I could actually hear the ice cubes melting inside the abandoned silver champagne buckets. I did not sell that lovely house," Evelyn continued, her voice echoing like a judge's gavel. "I physically could not have sold it. I was trapped inside Mercy Medical Center for 8 brutal weeks that exact fall, painfully recovering from a shattered hip. I signed absolutely nothing. I authorized 0 sales." Valerie's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. No sound came out. She was suffocating on her own lies. Mitchell pulled out a third heavy document. "This is a sworn forensic analysis report from Forensic Document Services, a highly certified firm specializing in criminal handwriting analysis. They ruthlessly examined the signature on the Chesapeake Bay sale contracts against genuine, authentic samples of Mrs. Henderson's daily handwriting." He slowly turned his head, letting his terrifying courtroom gaze sweep over the terrified guests. "Their scientific conclusion? The signature is a massive, blatant fake. The calculated probability of strict forgery is 99. But the lawyer did not stop there. The final nail was coming. He whipped out a 4th piece of evidence. Furthermore, the elite forensic experts did not just scientifically prove Mrs. Henderson didn't sign it. They successfully identified exactly who did. Mitchell's voice grew dangerously quiet. The specific loops, the heavy pen pressure points, the unique stylistic flourishes, they perfectly matched the architectural lettering samples of a recent local art graduate. Mitchell turned his dead-eyed, terrifying stare directly onto the shaking bride. "Morgan, you forged your own grandmother's signature." The massive collective gasp that ripped through the ballroom sucked every single ounce of oxygen right out of the air. Tristan instantly dropped Morgan's trembling hand like her skin had violently caught on fire. You committed a massive federal crime." Tristan backed away, his handsome face turning a sickly, horrified pale gray. Morgan's knees gave out. She collapsed hard into a wooden chair, her pristine white wedding dress pooling uselessly around her as she began to violently hyperventilate, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Wild, shocked murmurs erupted like a hurricane through the crowd. I watched Tristan's powerful father exchange a very dark, significant look with a senior judge standing near the bar. "The social empire is crumbling into dust." "You are lying," Valerie suddenly shrieked, her voice cracking in pure panic. "This is all completely fabricated. You are totally senile, mother. You don't know anything." "I am sharp enough to hire the best experts in the state," Evelyn fired back effortlessly. "I am sharp enough to perfectly preserve the physical evidence. And I am definitely sharp enough to have securely forwarded this entire criminal file to the Somerset County District Attorney's office last week." The last tiny drop of blood drained entirely from Valerie's face. You didn't." "Massive forgery and grand fraud, Valerie. That carries up to 7 hard years in state prison under Maryland law." Evelyn's voice suddenly turned incredibly gentle, adopting the exact same patient tone she used to explain tricky legal concepts to struggling second-year college students. "I desperately did not want to believe my own flesh and blood could do this evil thing. I gave you 4 years to finally confess, to make it right. But instead you proudly spent those years brutally slandering my sweet granddaughter, calling her a nasty manipulator, calling me crazy, trying to ruthlessly steal her inheritance the exact same way you secretly stole my property." Valerie violently spun around to face her husband. "Robert, say something right now. Stop this madness." Robert Henderson, the man who had stood silently through every single cruel moment of my life, took a terrified, cowardly step backward. "I didn't know," he squeaked out. His voice was totally flat, empty of any soul. "I knew absolutely nothing about the Chesapeake Bay house." I remembered his desperate, crying face in the dark coat room just last night. He knew. Every single one of them knew the whole time. "You signed the official transfer." Valerie screamed like a cornered animal, completely destroying him. "You were sitting right there." "I only signed what you told me to sign. I didn't know it was fake." The wealthy crowd watched in totally horrified fascination as 38 long years of a perfect high society marriage violently disintegrated into dust in real time. Morgan finally managed to speak, her voice tiny and completely broken. "Mom, what is Grandma talking about?" Valerie did not answer her favorite child. She couldn't. She just stood frozen in the dead center of her own carefully constructed, beautiful stage, surrounded by her perfect guests, watching her entire universe burn to the ground. Evelyn slowly turned back to me. Her wise eyes were incredibly tired, deeply sad, but fiercely resolute. "Penelope, I am so deeply sorry you had to find out the truth this ugly way. I am sorry I waited so long to strike." "It's okay, Grandma," I whispered, reaching out to tightly grip her wrinkled hand. "I completely understand." She squeezed my fingers affectionately. Then, she looked at Valerie for one final heartbreaking time. "You completely lost me the exact day I discovered what you had done in the dark. Tonight, everyone else just finally got to see the monster hiding in the light." She paused, leaning heavily on her wooden cane. "I truly hope someday you find the basic courage to take responsibility for your crimes. But I absolutely will not hold my breath." Evelyn turned proudly toward the grand exit. I walked tall right beside her. Behind us I heard Valerie suddenly start screaming. Wild, incoherent denials, nasty accusations, frantic demands that someone, anyone, do something to save her. I heard Tristan's wealthy parents say something incredibly sharp and brutal to the sobbing bride. I heard the loud murmur of the shocked crowd crescendo into a roaring hurricane of juicy gossip and wild speculation. But I didn't look back. Not a single time. I was finally walking out of my childhood prison, completely unaware of the chilling final move my sister's fiancé was about to make in the shadows of the hotel lobby. I need to pause my story right here for just one quick second. When I proudly walked out of that suffocating ballroom with my grandmother, my heart was hammering against my ribs. But I wasn't thinking about bitter revenge. I wasn't thinking about finally winning a sick family game. I was only thinking about how much precious time we had violently lost, and how incredibly grateful I was that we still had some left. I am not a victim anymore, I realized, taking a massive, shaky breath. I am completely free. If you have ever had someone in your dark life who fiercely believed in you when absolutely no one else did, please drop their name down in the comments. They deeply deserve to be celebrated today. And if you want to hear exactly how this massive explosion finally played out, make sure you are subscribed. Let's get right back into the fire. We barely made it halfway across the Grand Hotel lobby before Tristan desperately caught up with us. I heard his frantic footsteps first, the quick sharp click-clack of his expensive leather dress shoes smacking against the polished marble floor. I slowly turned around, fully expecting a wave of explosive anger, or maybe even nasty legal threats. What I saw instead was pure cold calculation. "Mrs. Henderson," Tristan Campbell addressed my grandmother directly, completely ignoring my existence. He didn't even quickly glance at my face. "I strongly think we should quietly talk about this messy situation in private. There may be some unfortunate misunderstandings that can be easily cleared up tonight. He doesn't care that his bride is a criminal." My mind flashed, completely disgusted. He only cares about the money. Evelyn regarded the tall, handsome groom with the exact same disappointed expression she probably used on her most dim-witted law students. "There are absolutely zero misunderstandings here, Mr. Campbell. But surely the whole Chesapeake Bay situation can be fixed," Tristan pushed, running a shaky hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I mean, wealthy families have silly disputes all the time. Paperwork gets a little complicated. If we could just sit down with the senior lawyers." "The paperwork was totally forged," Evelyn interrupted. Her voice cut through the air like a surgical steel blade. "My own daughter and granddaughter committed massive, deliberate fraud. Those are not silly family disputes. They are heavy federal crimes." Tristan rapidly shifted his weight. I watched his flawless, polite mask completely slip right off his face. Underneath that highly polished, wealthy veneer, I caught a terrifying glimpse of something wildly desperate. "Then Morgan mentioned that you might be heavily reconsidering your will, given the dramatic circumstances." Tristan tried again, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "The expensive wedding, the brand new family ties. Perhaps there is a creative way to—" "Mr. Campbell." Evelyn stepped forward, her dark eyes flashing with lethal warning. "I am not reconsidering a single thing. The Southside Penthouse belongs strictly to Penelope. It will always belong to Penelope. And if you are foolishly asking whether I will hand my remaining millions to a deceitful granddaughter who just married a pathetic man willing to beg at a ballroom door after discovering his new bride is a literal felon, the firm answer is absolutely no." Tristan's pale face violently flushed a deep, angry red. For 1/10 second his fists clenched, and I thought he might actually scream something incredibly ugly. Instead, Evelyn just smiled. It was that specific, terrifying smile that used to make grown courtroom attorneys sweat through their suits. "You married the entirely wrong Henderson, young man," she stated perfectly. "And frankly, given the disgusting lack of character I have seen from you tonight, Morgan is completely welcome to you." She turned her back on him without wasting another breath. Mitchell Warren smoothly stepped forward, using his broad shoulders to completely block Tristan's path. "I would highly advise you to run back to your ruined wedding, Mr. Campbell. Anything else you foolishly say right now could be directly used in the ongoing police investigations." Tristan Campbell, the arrogant son of a managing partner at one of Baltimore's most powerful law firms, suddenly looked very small, very young, and incredibly scared. He quickly retreated into the shadows without speaking another word. We finally pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped out into the freezing May night. The cool air smelled heavily of impending rain, and the tall vintage streetlights cast glowing golden pools over the rough cobblestones of Charles Street. It was beautiful. "Grandma," I said, my voice thick with unshed emotion, "I am so incredibly sorry about the ruined wedding, about the massive screaming scene, about all of it." She gently patted my bare arm. "Do not be sorry for a single second. I have been patiently waiting 4 years to say those exact words to her face." It felt absolutely wonderful. Despite the crushing exhaustion in my bones, I suddenly laughed. The sound came out raw, totally broken, but it was purely real. "What actually happens now?" I asked, looking between the two of them. Mitchell answered, his tone completely measured and professional. "The district attorney's office will aggressively proceed with their deep investigation. Mrs. Henderson has provided overwhelming, ironclad documentation. Whether criminal charges are officially filed tomorrow morning will strictly depend on their quick review, but the physical evidence is totally undeniable." "And Valerie and Morgan?" I asked softly. Evelyn's tough face suddenly softened with a complicated emotion. It might have been deep grief, or it might have been pure relief. It was incredibly hard to tell. That is entirely up to the state courts now. I have bravely done what I needed to do to protect you. The rest of their dark fate is completely out of my tired hands. I stood there quietly thinking about my furious mother still trapped inside that massive ballroom. She was currently surrounded by the exact elite people she had spent her entire life desperately trying to impress, actively watching everything she had ever built totally crumble into ash. Part of my broken heart felt a savage, wild satisfaction, but a much larger part just felt incredibly wonderfully tired. I am not doing this for cruel revenge, I whispered into the chilly wind, though I wasn't totally sure if I was talking to them or trying to convince myself. I am not doing it just to punish her. No, Evelyn firmly agreed, pulling her warm coat tighter. You are proudly doing it because some evil things simply cannot be allowed to continue. Some massive lies cannot be permitted to stand in the light. She looked at me with those incredibly sharp, knowing eyes. There is absolutely no cruelty in loudly telling the truth, Penelope. There is only beautiful clarity. A sleek black town car smoothly pulled up to the curb. Mitchell had secretly arranged the private ride while we were fighting inside the hotel. I should get your grandmother safely back to Broadmead, the lawyer said kindly. It has been an incredibly long, taxing evening. Evelyn waved a highly dismissive hand at him. I am not made of fragile glass, Mitchell. But yes, my old bones are very tired. She turned back to me, her eyes shining under the streetlights. Come visit my apartment tomorrow morning. We have a massive amount of lost time to catch up on, and I want to hear exactly how your design business is actually going. The real messy truth, Penelope. Not the polished, polite version you always give me. I will be there, I promised, my throat tightening again. She hugged me. A fierce, real, bone-crushing hug. It was nothing like the fake performative embrace Valerie had forced on me up on that terrible stage. I held on to her slightly longer than I probably should have. I am never letting you go again, I thought. I love you, my sweet, brave girl, she murmured into my hair. I love you too, Grandma. She slowly climbed into the warm back seat with Mitchell's careful assistance. I stood completely still, watching the red taillights pull away, slowly disappearing into the dark Baltimore night. I stood completely alone on the quiet sidewalk for a very long time. Suddenly my phone buzzed in my small purse. It was a rapid text from David Rollins. Just saw the Sun's legal beat reporter tweet something totally cryptic about a prominent Baltimore attorney going down. Was that her? I smiled tiredly and typed back. I will fully explain everything later. Thank you for saving my life. Another text chimed in immediately. This one was from a phone number I completely did not recognize. Penelope. It is Jessica Taylor from Baxter Legal. We were just at the wedding. I owe you a massive, sincere apology. I blindly believed awful things I never should have. If you are ever interested in discussing interior design work for our brand new corporate office, please call me tomorrow. I completely stared at the glowing screen. Jessica Taylor. She was one of the snobby, elite women I had seen aggressively whispering with Pamela Harrington earlier that exact evening. Now she was directly offering me a massive professional contract. I wasn't totally sure if I would actually call her back, but I securely saved the number anyway. Then I slid my phone back into my purse, pulled my thin coat much tighter against the biting cold, and started walking toward the parking garage. For the absolute first time in 4 agonizing years, my lungs expanded completely. I felt like I could finally truly breathe. But the explosive fallout of that ruined wedding was only just beginning, and the brutal legal consequences were about to completely erase the Henderson family name from the map. The legal fallout was swift, brutal, and mathematically precise. 3 short weeks after that disastrous reception, Valerie and Morgan were formally summoned to the Somerset County District Attorney's office. They were heavily questioned regarding the fake Chesapeake Bay property sale. The sterile, harsh fluorescent lights of the police station were a severe contrast to the sparkling crystal chandeliers they were used to. The intense interrogation dragged on for 5 grueling hours. When my mother finally emerged, according to what Mitchell later shared, she looked a full decade older. Her fancy defense attorney, a wealthy colleague from her exclusive tennis club who had originally agreed to protect her, withdrew from the messy case within days, officially citing a sudden conflict of interest. Rats always eagerly flee a sinking ship first, I thought when I heard the news. The real reason, I highly suspected, was that he had viewed the ironclad evidence and desperately wanted absolutely nothing to do with a losing battle. Or perhaps he had heard from enough mutual elite friends that continuing to represent a known fraud would permanently destroy his own standing in Baltimore's tight legal community. My cowardly father officially fled his own mansion on May 25th. He checked into the expensive Rosewood Hotel because even in the middle of a massive criminal crisis, Robert Henderson fiercely maintained his polished appearances. He released a highly calculated statement through a family friend, falsely claiming he was seeking quiet space to process recent shocking revelations, and had absolutely no prior knowledge of any improper financial transactions. Whether anyone in town actually believed his weak excuses was another matter entirely. His distinct signature was clearly written on the transfer documents right alongside Valerie's name. Claiming total ignorance only successfully works if people are naturally inclined to give you the benefit of the doubt. And after 35 years of standing silently beside his vicious wife, Robert had completely burned through all his public goodwill. Silence is the absolute loudest lie of all, and he made his lazy choice decades ago. Morgan and Tristan's luxurious international honeymoon was indefinitely postponed. I heard through a gossipy cousin that Tristan's rich parents had deep concerns about the messy financial entanglement. They strictly wanted their son's legal exposure fully clarified before the young couple traveled overseas. Actually, the harsh reality was much colder. The official annulment papers were ruthlessly filed before the courthouse even opened on Monday morning. The greedy dream of stealing my beautiful penthouse was permanently dead and buried. She traded her own grandmother's safety for a shiny diamond ring, and ended up completely empty-handed. The high society consequences unfolded much more quietly, but with devastating, lethal precision. On June 4th, Valerie received a stiff corporate email from Patrons for Justice, the elite charity organization whose massive annual gala she had proudly co-chaired for 19 years. The subject line simply read, "Your invitation status has been updated." The body of the message was brief and freezing cold. Due to highly unfortunate circumstances requiring serious legal resolution, her involvement in the upcoming gala was under strict review pending further criminal developments. Translation: she was completely banished. Shortly after, the Baltimore Bar Association officially opened a severe ethics inquiry. 2 honest attorneys who had witnessed the wedding disaster filed formal, written complaints. The complaints didn't allege anything Valerie had personally done to them. They heavily alleged conduct completely unbecoming of an officer of the court. Her precious license to practice law was dangling by a tiny fraying thread. On June 12th, a very small blind item magically appeared in the Baltimore Sun's popular legal beat column. It was written by a clever reporter I instantly recognized from David's busy newsroom. Baltimore area attorney currently under heavy investigation for alleged document fraud in a 2019 real estate transaction. The Somerset County DA's office publicly confirmed the criminal investigation is highly active, but strictly declined to comment on specific details. The attorney, whose identity has not yet been released, is reportedly connected to a highly prominent Baltimore legal family. No actual names were printed, but in a community as incredibly insular and gossipy as Baltimore's legal establishment, no names were ever needed. Every single person knew the exact truth within hours. I received 14 frantic text messages that specific week from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were genuine, heartfelt apologies. Some were sweet expressions of deep support. A few were clearly just greedy folks fishing for juicy gossip, which I easily ignored. The single message that mattered the most came from Jessica Taylor at Baxter Legal. She bravely followed up her late-night wedding text with a highly formal email. Subject: sincere apologies and a professional inquiry. Penelope, I want to begin by apologizing properly. At the reception, I blindly made awful assumptions based on twisted things Valerie had fed me over the years. Watching what actually happened that explosive night, watching how you handled yourself with such immense, unbreakable dignity under impossible circumstances, it made me deeply ashamed of my own foolish credulity. I do not expect your quick forgiveness, but I would love to offer something concrete. Our firm is completely renovating our executive conference floor. We are actively looking for an interior designer who truly understands strict professionalism, quiet discretion, and flawless taste. If you are interested, I would love to discuss the massive project. Please let me know either way. And again, I am so deeply sorry. Jessica. I sat quietly with that heavy email for 4 entire days before finally responding. A dark part of my bruised heart desperately wanted to reject it, to fiercely refuse anything that came from Valerie's toxic social circle. But a much wiser, healing part recognized that Jessica Taylor was not my mother. She was simply someone who had been horribly lied to, who had foolishly believed those lies, and who was now actively trying to make honest amends. I bravely took the meeting. The corporate project was incredibly substantial. A full top-to-bottom redesign of 2 giant conference rooms and a massive reception area for a mid-sized law firm. Total budget, 95. Strict timeline, 4 busy months. It was the absolute largest, most profitable contract I had ever landed. I am literally rebuilding my entire life using the exact same bricks they viciously threw at my head. By late July, I had happily received 2 more lucrative project inquiries from wealthy attorneys who had been sitting in that exact ballroom. Word was rapidly spreading, not just about Valerie's epic downfall, but about my undeniable talent. Powerful people who had previously dismissed me as the pathetic Henderson daughter with the silly decorating hobby were suddenly very curious about the tough Henderson daughter who had bravely stood her ground against a monster. I didn't blindly trust all of them. I ruthlessly vetted every single new client, asked very pointed questions about how they found my studio, and instantly turned down one shady project from a guy who seemed way too eager to pump me for private information about Valerie's pending criminal case. But slowly, carefully, one honest brick at a time, I began to totally rebuild. Not just my growing business, but my fragile sense of who I actually was. The strangest, most shocking development came in early July. I received a heavy certified letter from a sharp real estate attorney out in Chesapeake Bay. He formally informed me that the illegal 2019 sale of Evelyn's summer property was under strict legal review, and that the current innocent owners had been officially notified of massive potential title defects. Mitchell happily explained what this complicated mess meant over a quick cup of coffee. If the original shady sale was legally voided due to proven fraud, the angry buyers might have massive financial claims against Valerie for the entire purchase price. The beautiful property itself could potentially revert right back to Evelyn's estate. It is incredibly complicated, the lawyer smiled, taking a sip of his dark roast, and it could take years of fighting, but the wheels of justice are finally turning. Valerie Henderson, the woman who had spent her entire existence greedily accumulating fake status, stolen property, and empty social capital, was helplessly watching it all slip right through her greedy fingers. I won't pretend I didn't feel a tiny spark of warm satisfaction in that poetic karma, but mostly I felt something much closer to profound, quiet peace. True justice isn't about bloody revenge. It is simply about the universe finally forcing the world to recognize what is undeniably true. August 2025. Exactly 3 peaceful months after the wedding disaster. I am sitting quietly on the wide stone balcony of my beautiful penthouse, peacefully watching the glowing sun set over the dark Baltimore harbor. The endless sky is brightly streaked with deep orange and soft pink, and the calm water reflects it all like scattered, floating jewels. It is the exact kind of gorgeous, breezy evening my grandmother always deeply loved. Big open skies, quiet, safe moments, a chilled glass of crisp white wine, and absolutely nowhere else to be. She is here right now. In fact, Evelyn happily comes over every single Saturday. I drive out and pick her up from Broadmead early in the morning, and we spend the entire beautiful day together. Sometimes we slowly wander through the Museum of Modern Art. Sometimes we just sit right here on this breezy balcony and talk for hours. Today we have been talking heavily about my absent father. He called me, I tell her softly, watching a tiny sailboat drift by. Yesterday. She raises a thin silver eyebrow. And he desperately wanted to explain everything, to bravely tell me his sad side of things. I slowly swirl the pale wine in my crystal glass. He swears he truly didn't know about the stolen Chesapeake Bay house. He nervously says Valerie aggressively handled all the tricky paperwork, and he just blindly signed wherever she pointed her finger. Do you actually believe his story? Evelyn asks, watching my face closely. I think about it. I really truly think about the weak man who raised me. I believe he deliberately didn't ask any hard questions, I finally say, the truth settling heavy in my chest. I firmly believe he actively chose not to know. I believe he has been cowardly choosing not to know the ugly truth for 38 years about a whole lot of terrible things. Evelyn nods slowly, understanding perfectly. And what did you boldly tell him? I told him I needed a lot of space, that I wasn't remotely ready to see his face yet, that if he ever wanted a real relationship with me, he would have to completely earn it from scratch. Not by weakly explaining or crying on the phone, but by actually showing up consistently over a long period of time. She reaches over and warmly squeezes my free hand. That is a very healthy, beautiful boundary, sweetheart. We sit in a highly comfortable, loving silence for a long while. The sunset deepens into a rich, dark purple. Morgan nervously texted me too, I add, staring at the distant city lights beginning to flicker on. Last week, I heard the nasty divorce was finalized. She asked if I would please call her. She said she desperately wants to talk. And will you? I look out at the dark harbor, at the tired boats safely returning to their solid moorings. Not yet. Maybe not for a very, very long time. I pause, taking a deep breath of the salty air. She knew, Grandma. Maybe she didn't know the exact legal details about the Chesapeake Bay fraud, but she knew all about the daily pressure, the sick manipulation, the endless lies. She was standing right there every single time Valerie cruelly called me selfish or ungrateful. She never once defended me. She never once questioned the toxic poison she was being fed. That is very true, Evelyn agrees softly. If she ever wants to have a real sister again, she has to actually want to know the harsh truth. She has to be entirely willing to look in the mirror and see who our mother really is. And I honestly don't think she is brave enough to be there yet. I don't think she ever wants to be there. I take a slow cleansing breath. So I am not locking the heavy door forever, but I am absolutely not opening it until she is fully ready to walk through it, honestly. Evelyn smiles. A small, incredibly proud, radiant smile. You have learned something incredibly vital, Penelope. Something I deeply wish I had learned at your young age. What is that? That absolute love without deep respect isn't actually love at all. It is just a lazy, toxic habit. She looks at me with those incredibly clear, knowing eyes. You immensely deserve both. I started intensive therapy back in June. My brilliant therapist's name is Dr. Cynthia Miller, and she strictly specializes in toxic family systems and firm boundary setting. Every single Wednesday at 5 p.m. I sit safely in her cozy office in Columbia and bravely talk about painful things I spent 34 years desperately avoiding. It is incredibly hard work. Some weeks it leaves me completely, physically exhausting, but it is also the absolute most important, life-saving thing I have ever done for my own soul. There is something else blooming too. His name is Blake. He is a kind, funny architect I bumped into at a busy design conference in late July. He has warm, laughing eyes, a truly terrible sense of direction, and absolutely no idea who the wealthy elite Hendersons of Bolton Hill actually are. He genuinely likes me just for me. For my hard work, my loud laugh, my weird habit of talking nicely to my potted plants. It is very new. It is moving incredibly slow. But it is the very first time in my entire existence I have let a man into my heart without constantly worrying about what he might secretly think of my toxic family. No strings, no fake titles, just me. My grandmother finally finishes her wine and gently sets the empty crystal glass down on the iron table. You know, she says, looking up at the early evening stars. I have been thinking a lot recently about what I truly want my final legacy to be. You have already given me a beautiful legacy, I say gently, gesturing broadly at the stunning penthouse surrounding us. Not the silly property, she shakes her head firmly. I mean the other thing, the invisible thing that actually matters. I spent way too many decades just keeping the fake peace, she confesses, her voice thick with old regret, staying completely quiet just to avoid explosive conflict. Quietly letting Valerie become the exact monster she became because confronting her darkness was just too incredibly painful. She looks at me steadily, her eyes burning bright. I absolutely do not want that cowardly life for you. I want you to bravely speak the ugly truth, even when your voice violently shakes. I want you to fiercely protect your own heart, even when society tells you it feels selfish. I want you to always remember that being a kind person does not ever mean being a silent punching bag. I feel hot tears prick my eyes, but this time, they are tears of pure joy. I will always remember. Good. She cheerfully pats my hand. Now what on earth is for dinner? All this heavy emotion is making my old stomach grumble. I laugh loudly, and the joyful, unbroken sound fills the cool evening air. This is my actual life now. A gorgeous penthouse that is completely legally mine. A brilliant grandmother who loves me fiercely. A thriving design business that is growing bigger every day. Ironclad boundaries that remain firm. A beautiful, unwritten future. I am slowly building all by myself. One brave, honest choice at a time. I finally understood the greatest secret of all. True family isn't determined by shared blood. It is forged entirely by shared respect. If you are watching this right now, maybe you are trapped in a dark situation where your own family constantly expects you to set yourself on fire just to keep them comfortably warm. Maybe you have been cruelly told that setting healthy limits makes you a bad, selfish person. Maybe you are quietly wondering in the dark if you are actually allowed to want a better life. You are. You are absolutely allowed. Being truly kind to your own soul isn't the opposite of being kind to others. It is the absolute foundation of everything good. Sharing this journey wasn't easy, but the profound truth and raw intensity of finally breaking free are worth bringing into the light. If this story deeply resonated with you, if it beautifully reminded you that you completely deserve basic respect, that your personal boundaries fiercely matter, and that the hard truth is always worth telling, please leave a comment down below and share your own brave story. I genuinely want to hear it. If you found strength in these words, please hit that like button and subscribe to stay connected for more powerful, honest stories about escaping the dark and finding your own way. Protecting your beautiful peace is never a crime. It is an absolute necessity for survival. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you soon.